I'm sorry, I was speaking on mute. Sorry. Uh, just to recap about the topics which we have discussed in our last class is we have discussed about the database architecture, and after that we have seen the properties, and we try to understand what all the properties mean. It is for database properties, and we have also discussed about the file groups and what the use of it. So today we try to look at the database objects. Database is nothing but the collection of objects, so we try to look at them. So before I proceed the class today, do you have any questions, Venkat, Ishwar? Any questions from the topics which we have already discussed? Ishwar, can you please confirm? If you have any questions, you can always unmute yourself and speak out. Okay, all right. You missed a class yesterday, so I have uploaded the session just before. So probably once we are done with this class, you can go through these sessions. And if you have got any questions, you can always drop me an email. So I hope we are good to proceed with the today's session. So today's session is mostly about the database objects. Database objects, these are very much being developed by the developers. Developer create these objects, and normally we don't create any of these objects in our databases unless it is a DBA requirement. So it is not exactly required for the DBA task, but it should be good if you are aware about all these things. So the database objects are something like tables, views, store procedures, functions, then rules, defaults, cursor, triggers. So these all the objects you can see under databases. In your management studio, if you expand any database, under the database you see all these objects listed out. So in having said that, usually developer will create these tables. They will create the scripts like views, store procedure, functions, triggers. But as a DBA, we should be aware of those things, what a table is, or what a view is, or what a store procedure is. So that is the reason we are trying to discuss about this, and I restrict myself about the only the description, and I will show you a couple of examples only for tables, views, and store procedures. It is for just an understanding. And let us talk about the tables first. Table is nothing but the place we actually store the data. So the data in RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, is stored in database objects called tables. And the table is collection of related data entries, and it consists of columns and rows. Table is nothing but it it is a collection of rows and columns. It's just like an Excel sheet. How you try to insert some records in the Excel sheet, in the same way the table appears. So the table is nothing but the collection of rows and columns, and it holds the actual data. And remember, a table is the most common and simplest form of data storage. The table is the most common and simplest form of data storage in relational databases. So that is how it helps us to easily retrieve the data whenever we want. So this is how a table looks like. The table on top, you see the ID, name, age, address, salary. These are column names or column attributes in the table. And whatever you are seeing, 1, Ramesh, 32, Ahmedabad, these are data rows. So the ID, name, age, address, salary are columns, and collectively the entire record of a person, Ramesh, with his age, address, salary, we call it as a row. So the horizontal one we call it as a row, and the vertical one we call it as a column. So it would be this very similar to your Excel document. And this would be the columns, and this would be the row in the table. And Nitin, do you have any questions? I mean, I see you unmuted. If not, can you please mute yourself? Okay, thank you. So field or a column. Every table is broken up into smaller entities called fields, that is your columns. And these fields in the customer table consist of ID, name, age, address, and salary. So the ID, name, age, address, salary are columns inside this table. And in the same way, a record is nothing but the collection of and complete record is called a row. So you can see for one Ramesh 32 Ahmedabad and salary 2000 is a complete row, or we call it as a complete record. And the next is the views. So before we jump onto the views, let us try to create a sample table. Although we have created a couple of tables in our previous sessions, but still let me try to create now. So having said that, we can achieve the task in two ways, either in GUI or you can still write the T-SQL script. But I would like to go for GUI. So in order to create a table, you can right click on the tables on the selected database. So you first need to decide on which database you want to create the table. So you can expand the database and then go to tables and right click on it and do a new table. And this is where you need to provide the column names followed with the data type. What data you want to have in that column. If I say ID, then the data type should be what I'm assuming in this ID column. I want to have only integer values. I don't want to have the characters values in this ID column. So to make that criteria or condition, I make it as integer. So if I create a table this way, even though user by mistake, if we try to insert a character value in ID column, your SQL Server will throw an error and it clearly says that ID column doesn't allow the characters. It only allows integer values. So this is how happens when you fill online forms. In place of date of birth, if you type something else, the web page doesn't accept you. It is because at backend the data types were designed that way. So in the same, for ID, I would like to have only the integer values, and then as a third column you can see allow nulls. That indicates at some forms, when you try to fill a form, maybe you fill first name, last name, date of birth, gender, your highest qualification, and later if you come down, it says if you're an ex-employee or if you're an ex-serviceman, then checkbox. You still have an option to ignore them because you don't fall in that category. So that is how this condition. So if you don't want, if user doesn't want to provide an ID column, then if you want to allow that record, you have to check this condition. When I check allow nulls, that indicates this ID column will allow null values, that is blank values. So I don't want the ID column should be blank because it doesn't make sense. ID should have some value. Maybe the last name I can give, I can allow the null values, but ID is a mandatory. For every employee, ID will be a unique and mandatory. So I don't want to make it a null. Even though a user try to enter a record with a null ID, the system shouldn't accept it. So that is how it helps with us. And then I go to the first name, which is a varchar, because The name would be the characters, so I made it as a length 100. So what it means is it will allow varchar and the length it allow up to 100 characters. And if a person's first name is more than 100 characters, then your system doesn't allow it. And here still I need to uncheck allow nulls because I don't want this column to be a null. And maybe the last name, I still make it as varchar 100, and now I will keep the allow nulls because might be a few person they don't want to provide the null values, or else what I do is I will uncheck this one because everyone does have a last name. So let me add the middle name. So probably not everyone will have a middle name. So in that case, the system should allow a blank value for a person who is entering a record who doesn't have a middle name. So I can leave it with allow nulls. So once you are done with the basic design of the table, then you can right click here and do save table and then provide the table name, what you want to call it. I name it as employees and then just click OK. Now you are done with the table creation. So you can refresh the tables and you see the employees table got created. So you can expand it and you can check the columns, what columns it got. And you can see the ID integer not null. So the first three columns doesn't allow null values, but the middle name, it can be a null. And as we are saying that the ID column will be a unique, right? In every organization, the employee will have a unique value, the unique ID value. No two persons will have a same employee ID, right? So in that case, what we can do is we can make this ID column as primary key. So we can make this ID column as primary key so that once the primary key being set on this ID column, then the SQL will only allow the unique values in that column. If the ID column is not, if primary column is not there, then there is a possibility that this table can have duplicate ID values. So to avoid the duplicates, we can set up a primary key that will ensure this ID column does have only the unique values and there will be no null values repeated on this. So in order to create a primary key, I see a question from Venkat, what is a DBO? So when we create a table, it's something looks like DBO dot employees. DBO is nothing but the schema name. Within databases, we have schema, and the schema is nothing but the collection of tables. Let's say this database has got around 100 tables, and among those 100 tables, I have 20 tables that belongs to products, and other 20 tables belongs to orders, and other 20 tables belongs to customers. Then what I can do is I can group the tables as per the category, saying that I create a schema that is products, and I move all the product related tables to that schema. And for orders, the same way I create a schema called order, and I can group all the order related tables to that schema. And the same way for the customers. So by default, if you don't specify any schema, any customized schema, so it automatically picks up the DBO. And one more thing I forgot, that when I provided you the links to download the setup files, there was one more file I requested you to download is AdventureWorks database. So that is a sample database being provided by Microsoft, so you can play it around with all the data. So let me try to attach the database so that I can show you the schemas over there, the different schemas. So it's a zip file, so let me extract it. So you can see here, once I extracted, I have got the MDF and LDF file of AdventureWorks database. So what I need to do is I need to just map these two files to the SQL instance. How can I do that? It is with the help of detach and attach option. So when you were given a MDF and LDF files, how you can map these two files onto a SQL Server is using detach and attach process. So I can take you through that. So in order to attach those two files as a database on this instance, right click on the databases, and you see attach, select attach, and we need to browse the MDF file. We need to browse the MDF file, so click on add and then browse to the file where you have extracted it. So this is the MDF file, and you can see here when I selected the MDF file, at bottom it automatically picked up the LDF file as well. Let me drag it. You can see the LDF file is also picked up by the SQL, and now we just need to click OK. There was an error message. Okay, it says access denied. So let me move these two files to some other location and restore from there. Maybe I'll paste it here and try it again. So I remove it, add the MDF file, and then do OK. No, it still says access denied. It should work, but I need to find it out. I do have full permissions on this folder. Maybe let me try to go on to D drive and copy the files on this location. Okay, I remove it and add the MDF file again. Now it is on D drive. No. Wait. Let me try to provide the permissions on this folder. I'm just making myself easy by providing access to everyone on this machine. Okay, now let me do it. Let me try to reopen this. Attach. Yep, it done. So I have the database being attached to this instance, and you can now open this table and you can see there are n number of tables created, and the DBO you can see here on top three, these are schemas, and later you can see there is a human resource. This is also a schema, and you can see persons, then production, and then purchasing, sales. So these are all schemas. And in human resources we have got tables, department, employee, employee department history, employee pay history, job candidate, shift. So all these tables are part of human resources. So we have they have created a human resources schema, and they moved the tables onto the schema. It's just to group the tables as per the requirement. Suppose if the MDF and LDF files are not in same location, then it will attach the LDF file automatically. Not possible. It will just try to browse the same folder or the same path where your MDF file is there. If that is the case, you can always browse the LDF file onto a different location. You can browse it. It's still possible. Let me try to browse it again. I won't restore. I've just browsed it. Oh, it got hung up. Guys, Ishwar question was something like have copied the MDF and LDF files on the same location, but Ishwar question is something, what if the LDF file is on a different location? Is the management studio still picks up that LDF file automatically? So the answer is may not, because it tried to browse the same location to check if the LDF file is there or not. So stop working. So it's something, it's throwing out an error. So if that is the case, let's say your MDF file is on C drive and your LDF file is on D drive, you can first, you have to browse the MDF file, and then at bottom at the second console you can still have an option to browse your LDF file which is on different drive. So at last, let me, as a final time, let me try to browse it to see if, oh, all right, I understand, because this file is already being accessed by the data file. Why MySQL is not, might be is getting crashed when I try to browse that MDF file? It is because we have already attached the database to the instance. So this database is using those two files. So when the files are being used by the SQL doesn't allow any other connections to use that file physically. So that is the reason it is not allowing to access it. So what we can do is have the folder here. No, I can unzip the files quickly and show you here. Okay, let me provide permissions on this. Full permissions. All right, so now let me try to browse the file which is on C drive. Yeah, and this is where, if you think the LDF file is not in this location, you can still click on here and go and browse the LDF file, whatever the location you have. Does it make sense, Ishwar?
Yes, sir. I understood now.
All right. And Venkat, did I answer your question about the DBO, the schema? Who will create schema? It is again the requirement of the business. We are not going to decide anything within the databases. It is the business analyst or the developers who gonna decide about whether to create a schema or not. Because as a DBA, we don't actually know what data is inside the table. It doesn't matter for a DBA. So ultimately, the developers or the business analyst or the one who designs the relationships at backend, they have to provide the information for us. And they also provide this script for us to create the schemas. So I hope you are comfortable with creating a table. So once we create a table, how to insert a data? And again, you can do it either ways, either in GUI and or TCL script. So let me show you using the GUI. So in order to create a table, sorry, we have already created tables and we were at a point of discussing about the primary key, right? So at this moment, if I have to insert a data, so I can go for right clicking on the table and do a edit top 200 rows, and here I can provide the data. So I say something like David Noble. He doesn't have a middle name, so that's all right. And then I gave Stephen Potter. Maybe he has a middle name called James. And there is a chance I can, maybe by mistake, I can insert a duplicate value for another person who might be James. If you look at this data, it's not a correct data because here the two persons, the Stephen and James, are having the same employee ID. In real time, it doesn't work. It's not a right data, but still your table accepts it. You can check here. Once you enter the data, you can right click somewhere at white space and then do execute SQL. Then your records are permanently saved in your table. So you can, to confirm it, right click table and then do select top 1000 rows. And this is how the data being stored inside your table. And this is what I'm trying to explain you. If you don't have a primary key on this table, usually these type of mistakes could happen. So to avoid all these mistakes, what we can do is we need to create a primary key on this ID column. So before creating a primary key, we need to delete these duplicate values. So what I do is I will just truncate the data. I will just delete the data from this table. So in order to delete the data from this table, this command is very simple. It's delete from employees. I can just select this query and do execute. Okay, and once I execute this, it will throw an error. It says invalid object name. Can you guess why it is giving invalid object name?
I think there is no a table name called employee.
No, it is there. On left hand side you can see it's there.
Okay.
In our previous class I said whenever you are executing any query, you need to ensure whether you are executing that query on a right instance and on a right database. So here it is under master. So you can also check here. It is in master. So when I am executing this query, it is trying to find the table in master database. And obviously this employees table doesn't exist in master. So that is the reason it was saying invalid object name. And you might get a question like, then how about it executed the data read from the same table? It is because we have given a fully qualified name for this table. Even though this first query is executing in master, we are asking it to go inside this database, which is called testdb, and then browse this table. So that is the reason the first query got succeeded while the second query getting failed. So there's a two ways to resolve it. Either use the fully qualified name for this also. So what you can do is you can just copy this and paste in front of the employees. This is the one way you can do it. And the other way is just switch the database from master to test. Both ways will work. But please do remember, whenever you execute any queries, make sure that you are executing on right database. So I can still keep it in master and now execute this query. So you can see it got succeeded and the 3 rows were deleted. So I can do a quick check again and there are no data in this table. Now to create a primary key, again you need to go to the design phase. So you can right click on the table and then select design, and here we are making our ID column as a primary key. So at this place do a right click and set primary key, select set primary key. So now this ID column is set as primary key, so you can save it and close it. And now let me try to insert the data in this table. I will go with the same data and let me give the same number again. You can see here when I gave the same ID for the second record, it says the data in the row 3 is not committed. It's because violation of primary key constraint. And the primary key, this is a primary key, the pk underscore employees is a primary key on this table, and it says cannot insert duplicate key in object dbo.employees. So it clearly says that you cannot insert duplicate values because this table has got primary key. So this is the way in maybe once you join in any organization, and if you notice this type of errors, it says violation of primary key constraint, then that means users are trying to insert a value that is already present in the table. So it's a straightforward error message. So I need to change this value to the unique. So now it will allow. So I can do a quick execute SQL and the data will be stored. So this is how we can maintain the data consistency. So the next is the views. What a view is. A view is nothing more than a SQL statement that is stored in the database with an associated name. So a view is nothing but a tsql command. So let me go back and show you. Earlier, just before, what we did is we did a select right, the data selection on this table. So just repeat it again. Okay, so what I'm saying is the view is nothing but the SQL statement. Where it is there? Yeah. So a view is nothing but a SQL statement that is stored in a database with an associated name. So instead of executing this 4 or 5 lines query, what I'm doing is I'm pushing all these 5 lines SQL query with a single associated name. And going forward, I use that only view name in order to pull out the data. So I can show you an example so that it will make you understand. So this is my query, okay, and I have got employees table in my database. Maybe you might get a request from a user saying that please provide me a read access on my employee table. So user is requesting read permissions on this employees table. At the same time, you can provide the read permissions to that user, that's not an issue, but maybe you don't want to show the last name. Maybe assume that this last name is a sensitive. Assume that instead of last name, it is a SSN number or credit card information. So you don't want to share with the user. So you want to restrict that column by doing some techniques at SQL. It is something like the view. So my task is I need to provide read permissions to a user on this table, but at the same time I need to hide the last name because it is a sensitive information in this table. So to hide that one, what we do is in our select command, we just remove this column, or the other way is just comment it. The double hyphen is nothing but it comments. So you can re-execute this statement and you see we only got ID, first name and middle name. The last name is not displayed over here. So we can ask the user to execute this query, but we can't rely him. He might just uncomment this one and execute it. Still it shows him the last name data. So to make it more secure, what we do is on top of this we create a view, and the syntax for view is create view name. I say it as underscore employees as. This is a syntax to create a view. So you can just execute it. So again, be careful. This view gonna create in master. So better change it to test and then execute it. Now the view got created. So now what we can do is we just provide this view name to the user. So when user he tried to read the data from the table, even though he used star indicates to pull out all the rows and columns in this table. So even though he used select star from employees, it only shows him the ID and the first name and the middle name. It doesn't show him the last name. So with the help of view, we can secure the data. That's a one advantage of it. But what an view is, it's nothing more than a tsql command which is associated with a single name inside your database. And again, the one more advantage is you might have in real time in your database, you might have tables for each and every month. So you have one table for January, one table for February, one table for March, and one table for April. And you might get a request from a user saying that I need data for all this year. So I need data starting from Jan till 22nd April. So what we do is we provide him 4 tables. The Jan table, Feb table, March table, and the current month April table. But the user is not happy. he come back and say, I don't want to use 4 different tables in my queries. I want it as a single table. Merge all the data in one table and give it to me. Assume you can do that, but assume each month table is of 10 GB size. The Jan month table is 10 GB, Feb 10 GB, March 10 GB, and current April might be around 8 GB. So in total, it will be around 48 GB. If you try to merge the data from all these 4 months into again a 5th table, then you need to have another 40-45 GB extra space on your disk. And again, it is a huge work and load on your machine. And at the same time, you can't argue with your user. So you need to provide him in a single table from where he can read all the 5 months or 4 months data. So in that case, with the help of view, we can merge the data. When I say merge, it's a virtual merge. We are not going to create any tables. We are not going to merge all the data, but it's just a T-SQL statement. As user is not happy to join those 4 tables, so what we do is from our side, we do that stuff with the help of view, and we just provide a view name to that user. And from user perspective, he use that single view and he can pull all the data from the tables. So I will show you a quick example of that. I'm creating a table called tbl underscore maybe Jan. It's an ID integer, name Wacker. Okay, this is the one table in testdb. And the same way, I have a table for Feb. I have created it, and I have table for March. I can press F5 on my keyboard, so that's what I'm doing to execute this query. And currently for April. Okay, so I have created around 4 or 5 tables. So I do a quick refresh, and you can see I have got all these tables. So let me insert data in this table. As I have already shown you the GUI to insert the data, so now I'm using a query. And again, it is a very simple and easy to understand the query. So what the task we are doing, we are trying to insert a record. So the command starts with insert, where we are inserting into a table. So insert into table name, provide the table name, which is Jan, with values, the ID. The ID you need to provide, I say it as 1, then have got a name, something like the text. I just say it's Jan. This is a syntax to insert a value in a table. So I can click on execute. So it says 1 row inserted, and I do the same for with the other value, and I copy it at bottom and I insert for the other monthly tables. So it's Feb. It doesn't matter, you have created with the cap value table and you can still use the small value table. It doesn't matter. That's what the collection uses. So this is for Feb. I use a value called 3, and this is for March with a value 4. And finally, this is for April with value of 5. So I have got 4 tables here for each and every month. Assume that each table has got 10 GB of data, some millions of data. So the user is not ready to use all these 4 tables in his report to get a consolidated data for whole this here. and he is insisting us to get a single table with all the 4 months data. So one way what we can do is we can create a new table and we can start moving all this data onto that table. So it's gonna take a lot of time, and it will put load on your server, and it take the disk space, and at the same time you are keeping the duplicate values on your databases. So to avoid all these things, we can use a view. So before I create a view, how we can union these data, or how can we join all these 4 tables into one result set? So I can execute something like select star from tbl underscore jan. In the same way, I can just copy it and change the table name from jan to feb, then march, then april. So I can execute this query, but you can see the result set are different. For jan it is giving in one result set, and for feb, for march, and for april in all different sets. I need all these to be shown in one result set, so that for user it seems to be a single table. So how can I do that? With the help of a command called union all. You can use union, or you can use union all. The major difference between union and union all is, if you use union, it will eliminate duplicate values. It will only select the distinct values. If you use union all, it doesn't check whether there are duplicate records in Jan and Feb. It doesn't matter. It pulls out all the records. So I just add union all. Yeah. So I see there's someone ping me. Yeah. There's a question from Ishwar. As we discussed that MDF and LDF files should be in different path, so while attaching the database in production, we should keep these two files in different path and then we should attach them. Am I right? Yes, perfect. As per performance, we always need to keep our MDF and LDF files in two different locations. So now you can execute this query, and you see all the 4 tables data is consolidated into one result set. So you can just provide this query to the user, but he's not happy with that. He doesn't want to use this union alls and tables. He doesn't want to write all the scripts all the time. So to make it easy for the user, so on top of it, we create a view. We say it as year 2016 as, and just execute it. And now to the user, you can just give this name, and he doesn't even know whether this is a view or a table, because whenever he reads the data, it just picks up all the data from these 4 tables and it gives you the result. So what actually happens is, when I execute this query select star from view name, so whenever this query being run, it actually executes this query at backend and get the results to the user, but still the user doesn't know. So this is the advantage of the views. So guys, did you understand what a view is and how it can be useful in the real time? It is somewhere an interview question as well. The same scenarios which I have given you, the interviewer might ask you the same case where you have got 4 different tables, but the user is inserting to get all those 4 tables data into single table, but you don't have space on the drive. How you achieve that? It's with the help of views. And the same way as we have done for the first example, that you want to hide 1 or 2 columns, then how you can do that? It's again with the help of view. So a view can contain all, I just read out the definition. A view can contain all the rows of a table or select rows from a table. So we have seen it. You can still do that. Whatever the query you write, you can pass that query to the view. That's it. A view can be created from one or many tables, which depends on the written SQL query to create a view. And one more thing, we have merged 4 or 5 different tables, right? But the condition is all these tables should have same number of columns with same column names with same data types. Then only the unions can be possible, or else it will throw out an error. If my table underscore Jan has 3 columns and my Feb has got 4 columns and my March table has got 5 columns, then your union all doesn't work. So that is the condition. We need to have same number of columns with the same column names along with the same data type. So views, which are kind of virtual tables, that doesn't hold any data in it. Whenever we try to read data from the view, it actually executes the query inside it. So it doesn't hold all the data in the view. It's just a virtual table. So in what all perspective these views can be used is structure data in a way that users find appropriate. Maybe you have a table with the data called ID, name, and then maybe monthly salary and the department. And the user, he doesn't want the salary in month. He want it per year basis. So in that case, you can still write a query and you can make a small difference. You can calculate your monthly salary into 12 times and just pass that, just create that view using that query and provide the view to the user. So we can still do some aggregate functions within the query, and that can be inherited in the view. And the next benefit is restrict access to the data, such as a user can see what they need or and no more. That's what we have done. We have hidden the last column of the table. And next is summarize data from various tables which can be used to generate reports. That's what we have just did. We have joined 4 different tables, so it can be easy for the users to summarize their reports. And the basic syntax for view is create view, view name as, then followed with your select SQL command. And that's all about the view. So now we look at, okay, we have an example of that view. So consider this is an example of a table, and among this, now we would like to create a view, and that view should only display customer name and age. It should not display the address and salary. So in that case, you can write a query called create view view name as select name comma age from customers. So the result would be it just displays only 2 column values, name and age. So the next, we try to look at the store procedures. As it sounds, it stores the procedure. We might have, until now we have seen just a very select commands. It's to read data from the database table. We might have some DML commands where the users try to update, delete, insert, or create new tables. Any commands can be written. So in real time, the developers will write some 100 or 1000 lines of query. And if they provide you that 1000 lines of query to a DBA and ask you to run every hour or every morning, so what you need to do is you will be copying that 1000 lines of query on a notepad, and every day morning you copy that content onto a SQL query and you try to execute it. And it's a very complex thing because the format will change when you try to copy from a notepad or from a WordPad onto a SQL. The format will change and it start throwing you an error, and it is a very complex to identify those errors for such a long and lengthy scripts. So what we can do is, to avoid all these situations, we can create a stored procedure and the same as view. The major difference between the view and stored procedure is, in view you can only have select queries, but in stored procedure you can have all types of queries. You can have select query, you can have insert query, you can have update queries, you can create tables, you can drop tables. Anything can be written inside a stored procedure. So I can give an example. So let us first go through this slide. So a stored procedure is a group of transact SQL statements compiled into single execution plan. And a stored procedure is nothing more than a prepared SQL code. So it's nothing but a SQL code that you save so you can reuse the code over and over again. That's what I said. Instead of copying the 1000 lines of script from the notepad every day onto the Management Studio, you can just prepare that SQL code, and you can create the store procedure with a single word, and you can use that single word store procedure over and over again in order to execute that whole script. So if you think about a query that you write over and over again, instead of having to write that query each time, you would save it as a stored procedure and then just call the stored procedure to execute that SQL code that you saved as a stored procedure. So I will just take you an example so that you will be a bit familiar about that. Guys, just bear with me another 5 to 10 minutes so I would finish off the slides. Let's say I have to create a table called tbl_test. This is ID, I say integer, then maybe name, I say it's varchar 100. I'm not executing this query, I'm just writing different kinds of queries in this query window. Once I create a table, then what I do is I insert data in this table. Okay. Then what I do is I just provide a go statement between this so that once it completes that upper statement, it will continue with the second statement sequentially. Then after that, I will try to update the data. I'm just trying to update the value sample from sample to, I say it as actual data, and where ID equal to 1. And then after, what I do is I will insert a row again. So I'm copying this query and with a value 2, and I say new sample data. Okay. And then after, I delete data from this table. So let me insert one more row here so that it would be easy to identify the operations. So I name it as 3. Okay. Now I'm deleting the data from table underscore test where ID equal to 3. So these are all the different types of statements. Maybe user want to execute these queries every alternative. So it would be tough to write these queries all the time whenever you need it. Even though you are much familiar about the scripts, there are some chances you might miss some bits and pieces if you're doing manual things. So to avoid all this rework every time you want to execute, you can just create a stored procedure. I can say create procedure, and procedure names always the standard. The naming convention should be using as USP underscore. It indicates user stored procedure, and you can provide any name after that. I say maybe test. You need to provide as and then begin. If you provide begin, then it need to have end. Okay, whenever you use begin, it should have end. So it's nothing but open parenthesis and close parenthesis. So this is to create a stored procedure. So I can just execute it. Oh, there's something. It's not. Let me remove the deletes. Yeah, let me try it now. So the stored procedure is now created. So once the stored procedure being created, from next time onwards, you can just execute this stored procedure. Instead of running all these queries again and again, what you can do is, I'm going to new query. Sorry. I can just paste the stored procedure name. So before this, you need to provide a command called execute. Execute stored procedure name. So as of now, just refresh and see I don't have any table saying that test, tb underscore test. But once I execute it, you can select this and click on execute. It actually what it does is it gonna execute all these queries inside the stored procedure. So all these operations will happen. So let me show you. The first thing, the table creation. You can see the table got created. So the first statement is executed, and the next is we have inserted a data called sample inside this table. So you can do a select command. So what we have done is the first time we have inserted a sample data, but it is not showing here. It is because immediately we have updated this data from sample to actual, right? So that is what it is showing. The first one is actual. And then after, what we did is we have inserted two records in the table, but it is only showing the record 2. It is because immediate after that we have deleted a row ID called 3. So that is the reason the table now has got one row with actual data and the second row with new sample data. And this is one thing, and there are many examples of creating a stored procedures. The other stored procedure, what I can do is maybe I want to know the date name. It's day provided with it's date. Okay, it gives me the date, but I want to know weekday. Yeah, right. So this is a query. I want to find out what day today is. So today it's a Friday. So if this is the query you want to execute all the time, still you can integrate this query into a stored procedure, and you can just keep on executing the stored procedure, and it will give you the day whether it is a Friday or Monday. So store procedure is nothing but executing all type of queries. The only difference between the view and store procedure is store procedure only takes select queries, whereas the views only takes select statements, but store procedure can take all types of queries, and store procedure will also accept user inputs. An example is, maybe I don't want to find the day of maybe what day today is. Maybe I want to know what's the day of Jan 1st, 2018, what day it falls, whether it's a Monday or Tuesday. So in that case, you can still create a store procedure and just pass the parameter saying that Jan 1st, 2018. The result will be automatically, it says whether it is a Monday or Tuesday. So any questions about store procedures? And again, it is not a requirement for us to write all these store procedures. It's just for our understanding. As a DBA, even though we don't write all the scripts, but we need to be in a situation to understand what a store procedure is, or what a view is, or what a table is. So by what we do have some benefits on using the store procedures. It's like by using store procedure, you can always reduce the server or client network, because there's a lot of difference when you execute some 1,000 lines of query on SQL, and you can do the same stuff using a single word. And the second benefit is reuse of code. I don't remember all those 5 or 6 lines queries, but I can still remember the single store procedure, which is USP_test. So I can just execute that query whenever required instead of writing the 10 lines of queries. And easier maintenance, and the last one is a better performance from the SQL perspective. And guys, just be with me another 5 minutes, so I would close this development topic. We do have many types of SQL commands. So in order to categorize, we can have 3 different languages within SQL. That is, the first one is the DDL. It's data definition language, and the commands that fall under this language are create, drop, alter. So what are the commands we use to create a table or to change the structure of the table? Those commands fall under DDL language, data definition language. So to create a table, if you drop a table, or to alter a table, so these commands ultimately change the structure of the table. So these commands will fall under DDL language. And the next is a DML language. The name itself gives us data manipulation language. What are the commands that being used to manipulate the data, to change the data in the table? So it's something like the insert. Insert will change the data in the table, and update does change the data in the table, and delete commands. Even you can use the delete command that can change the data in the table. So all these commands will fall under DML language, data manipulation language. And the next one is the DCL language, which is a data control language. The name itself tells us it control the commands that can control or that can secure the data. So the commands can be used as grant, revoke, and deny. So these 3 commands can be used if you want to grant permissions to any users on these database objects. If I request you to provide me a read access on a table, then you use a command saying that grant select on table name to the user. So these type of commands are called as data control language. The commands that control the access to your underlying tables. So the revoke is nothing but whatever you have granted, that will be revoked. And the deny is something, maybe the name indicates, misleads, somewhere the revoke and deny almost same, but there's a difference. Revoke removes assigned grant permissions. Okay, let's assume I'm a user on and I have access on a database, and I have requested you to provide a select permission on a table, so you granted me and I have done my work. Then after you revoked the permission, so you used revoke statement, and that has removed my read permissions. But surprisingly, when I execute this select query again, I'm still able to read the data. Even though you ran the revoke command, as a user, I'm still able to read the data from that table. It is because I'm a part of a group, and that group still have access on the database table. As an individual, my permissions were revoked, but I'm still a part of a group, and that group has permissions on this table. So that way, I still access the data. So if you still want to remove the permissions for the user, even though he access as an individual or he comes through a group, so in that case you can use deny. So denies permission to the object for an operation. Once it's set, since it takes precedence over all the grant permissions, user will not be able to perform the operation against the object. So that is the only major difference between the revoke and deny. So any questions? Sorry, Venkat, I missed your question. I see it now. Can we attach same database to multiple instances? No. I can say yes, I can say no. The no is somewhere is you cannot use the same MDF file to create multiple databases. And again, there's a confusion. Let me make it clarify. What I mean to say is you can go to SQL and browse the properties of this file, the AdventureWorks database, and you can see the AdventureWorks database files are in D test, D fold, so D drive under test folder, and these are the two files. So you cannot use these two files to attach the database on a different instance. It's not possible because when this database is online, that means these two files were logged by your SQL Server. I can quickly show you. I can go back to that folder, the D drive, and test. Now let me try to delete it. It says this action cannot be completed because the file is open in SQL Server. So you cannot either open, either copy, either delete this file as long as your database is online. But in other case, where I have downloaded this one, maybe I have downloaded here, so I can use this MDF and LDF files. I can copy this as this or nowhere linked to this instance, right? So it allows me either to drop or delete. So I can copy these files and move across all the 4 or 5 instances. I can attach them. That's possible. But once the MDF and LDF files are associated with a SQL, then your SQL Server will not allow you to either copy, either delete or update that files. So any more questions before I close the call? Sorry guys, I took around maybe 15 minutes extra. Okay, all right. I don't see any questions. So I would like to close the call now. I don't want to take more time as it's a weekend. So thank you very much, and we'll be back on Monday. And have a happy weekend. And please try to make some time and go through the previous sessions. Sure, sure. Everyone, I request you to please don't hesitate. If you have any questions or concerns or any errors, please drop me an email.